Tonight on PBS News Weekend, California wildfires rage as the devastating blazes spread into new areas of Los Angeles and the death toll rises. Then the EPA says a chemical found in homes, schools, and businesses poses an unreasonable risk to human health. And the rapidly expanding universe of mini dramas made to be watched on your phone and raking in millions.
What we've learned over the past 5 years with the streaming wars and with the strikes and all the obstacles that Hollywood has had to overcome is that Hollywood underestimates this type of innovative digital content at its own peril.
Major funding for PBS News Weekend has been provided by...
In 1995, two friends set out to make wireless coverage accessible to all. With no long-term contracts, nationwide coverage, and 100% U.S.-based customer support. Consumer Cellular. Freedom calls.
The ongoing support of these individuals and institutions. And friends of the NewsHour. This program was made possible by the Corporation for Public Broadcasting and by contributions to your PBS station from viewers like you. Thank you.
Good evening, I'm John Yang. The desperate battle between firefighters and wildfires in Los Angeles is now in its 5th day, with more evacuations and high winds threatening more lives and more homes. Officials say there are 11 confirmed deaths from the fire so far, and at least 13 people are missing. Stephanie Tsai begins our coverage tonight from Malibu.
As the light of day dawned over Los Angeles, a thick wall of smoke fanned out over hillside neighborhoods that so far have been spared by the flames. But as those fires crept ever closer, helicopters scrambled to drench the wildfires with water pulled from a nearby reservoir.
As you can see, the Palisades fire continuing to chew through the Santa Monica Mountains.
Overnight, the fire burning through Pacific Palisades spread northeast and tore through vast tracts of the Santa Monica Mountains. That flare-up spurred additional evacuations in the Brentwood and Encino neighborhoods. Los Angeles City Fire Chief Kristen Crowley gave an update this morning.
We immediately redeployed resources from the San Fernando Valley to begin evacuation and extinguishment efforts with a relentless air attack utilizing all available aircraft in the area.
Mayor Karen Bass stood by Crowley, responding to mounting criticism about inadequate firefighting resources.
We have got to stay focused until this time passes. When the fires are out, make no mistake, we will have a full accounting of what worked and especially what did not.
A Los Angeles Times investigation found that a key area reservoir was empty in the lead up to the fires when firefighters confronted dry hydrants. Los Angeles County Fire Chief Anthony Maroney defended the department's preparations and deflected criticism aimed at decision makers.
I did everything in my power to make sure that we had enough personnel and resources before the first fire started. It wasn't for a lack of preparation and decision-making that resulted in this catastrophe. It was a natural disaster.
A disaster that still has residents reeling. God. Nina Kaniram works for the humanitarian aid organization CORE, which has been distributing hygiene kits, masks, and other supplies to those impacted by the fires. Over the years, Kaniram has become an expert, not only on what it takes to recover from wildfires, but on the effects on communities from climate change, which scientists say contributes to more extreme fires.
All we lost was our stuff.
This week, her work became more personal than ever when the Palisades fire arrived at her doorstep.
Just like everyone else, I was in shock and disbelief. I tried to separate myself and just remember what other people who have survived fires told me, kind of take one moment at a time.
She and her husband had lived there with their 2 kids, 17 and 20, for the last 8 years.
You can have all the information, all the, go bags, all the training, the plans, the alerts, but you also need to have a support system for afterwards. I consider myself a really strong woman, a really strong mom. And I did not cry in front of my kids for about 36 hours. And then I was like, you know what? I can cry in front of them. They can see that this is painful. They can see.
It's still unclear where they will be housed, but they want to stay close to the Palisades community. At the same time, she questions whether continuing to rebuild in these high-risk areas is sustainable.
But all these people are going to want to rebuild, or? I want to move right back to where I was. I want the grocery store to move back. I want my dentist to move back, and the library, and the school. But should they? And it's hard to reconcile that in my brain. I can't.
That ambivalence about what's next is palpable. Now, looking ahead, the forecast isn't terrible, but it isn't great. They are expecting Santa Ana winds anywhere from moderate to strong from now through Wednesday. So firefighters really trying to get ahead of containment from the air, hoping that the winds stay at bay. John?
Stephanie, clearly the priority now is containing these fires, limiting the damage. But have they begun to try to figure out how they started?
Well, there is a suspected arson in one of the smaller fires, but as far as the 2 larger fires we've been covering, the Palisades and the Eaton, there has been no official cause. They did announce today a new task force made up of local, regional, state, and federal authorities that will be investigating the causes of the major fires. They are taking a very hardline stance on arson.
Stephanie, I know you grew up in the area, not far from some of the evacuation zones. What was it like? What's it been like to essentially go back home and see all this devastation?
Well, I didn't grow up in this fancy Malibu area, but my family is inland and they were close to the Altadena evacuation zone. And it is hard seeing places where you hold memories burn up in flames. There are some places that remained. My family, like everyone else in many parts of Los Angeles, were on tenterhooks and have been for days as those winds and fire conditions continue. But this is home, and I can't see them leaving this place. However, between the disasters and the costs of living and the cost of rebuilding, I do have to wonder, John, if this is going to be an inflection point for some Angelinans and Angelinos who have until now held on to the California dream.
Stephanie Sy in Malibu. Thanks to you, Stephanie, and to your entire team out there.
Thank you.
The vast plumes of smoke and ash from these fires are threatening the health of people miles away. It's led both the Biden administration and Los Angeles County to declare public health emergencies. Ali Rogan spoke with Dr. Russell Bohr, an assistant professor of medicine and public health at UCLA.
Dr. Bohr, thank you so much for joining us. You've lived on the West Coast for a long time. How does this fire compare to others that you've experienced, and what sort of symptoms are folks presenting in your clinical practice right now?
It's been a very busy few days and lots of calls and messages from patients and lots of folks coming into clinic feeling more short of breath, more chest tightness, and generally just worse than their baseline. And spent a lot of time trying to figure out how to optimize people's respiratory medications to compensate for that, but also a lot of time doing counseling on how to best keep themselves safe given these difficult circumstances that we're experiencing here in LA right now.
What sort of health issues tend to crop up when there's fires like this?
We worry the most about people with chronic heart and lung disease, and that's because small particles can actually work their way all the way down, not only into the deepest parts of the lung, but even sometimes transit into the bloodstream through the lung. And so what we worry about most is acute flare-ups of cough, shortness of breath, and wheezing, especially in the lungs, and that can affect even people without pre-existing lung disease, or for people that do have pre-existing lung disease, to flare up inflammation to the point of needing medical attention if the inflammation gets so bad that people aren't able to get enough oxygen into their body. Even short-term high doses of exposure, like we see when the air quality index is above 200, can be very hazardous to people who are otherwise healthy. And I tell people, even if you're a seasoned athlete, this is not the time to be going outside and taking a nice hike up to the top of the hills to see if you can see the fire or not. This is affecting everyone. You'll even hear in my voice right now a little congestion because my allergies are acting up and I haven't even been outside today. So despite our best efforts, it can be really rough.
And what are some of those efforts? How can people protect themselves?
Yeah, for the most part, we encourage folks, if you don't need to go outside for something right now, try to stay indoors with the doors and windows closed if you can. If you have central air conditioning or heating, then usually there's a filter in the air intake system, and those can be changed and even upgraded to be replaced with something that is the equivalent of a high efficiency filter or a HEPA filter. And for people that are particularly sensitive or maybe don't have central air, a HEPA filter in the bedroom at night, because that's where you're going to spend most of your time, can really make a big difference in quality of life. For those who do need to go outside, we encourage you, if you need to be out for more than 5 or 10 minutes, you should be wearing a tightly fitted N95 or equivalent mask right now, because that has pores that are small enough to filter out those harmful particles in the air. And thankfully, once you're in your car, most cars have the equivalent of an air filter able to filter those things out. So really, it's just if you're going to be out walking around, doing your shopping errands, commuting to and from work, or whatever it may be, that you need to be extra careful right now.
Great advice for everybody. Dr. Russell Bohr with UCLA, thank you so much for breaking this down for us.
Thanks for having me.
In other news, President Biden has given Pope Francis the nation's highest civilian award, the Presidential Medal of Freedom with distinction. The citation describes Francis as a light of faith, hope, and love that shines brightly across the world. It's the first and only time Mr. Biden has made the award with distinction. The President and the Pope spoke by phone today. They were to have met this weekend in person at the Vatican, but Mr. Biden canceled the trip in order to focus on the deadly Los Angeles wildfires. Late word tonight that Special Counsel Jack Smith has resigned from the Justice Department. In a court filing late this afternoon, Smith said he had completed his work into the 2 criminal investigations of President-elect Trump. The filing asked U.S. District Court Judge Aileen Cannon to allow the quick release of Smith's final report into the charges that Mr. Trump tried to overturn the 2020 election. Some Justice Department officials fear that that report may never be made public once Mr. Trump becomes president. And Sam Moore, half of the 1960s duo Sam and Dave, has died from complications following surgery. The pair recorded some of soul music's era-defining hits, including Soul Man, You Don't Know Like I Know, and I Thank You. Musicians from Al Green and Michael Jackson to Bruce Springsteen have cited Moore as an influence. He was inducted into the Rock and Roll Hall of Fame in 1992. Sam Moore was 89 years old. Still to come on PBS News Weekend, the dangers of a toxic chemical most of us encounter in our everyday lives and how to protect yourself from it. And the growing popularity of short-form videos designed to be watched on your phone.
This is PBS News Weekend from the David M. Rubenstein studio at WETA in Washington, home of the PBS NewsHour, weeknights on PBS.
Many of us know formaldehyde as that clear chemical with the powerful smell that permeates high school biolabs. It's found just about everywhere, including in a lot of things that are probably in your homes and offices right now: composite lumber, plastics, paints, and glues. And this past week, an Environmental Protection Agency evaluation said it poses an unreasonable risk to human health. Last month, a ProPublica investigation concluded that it causes far more cancer than any other airborne pollutant, and critics say not enough is being done to address the risk. Sharon Lerner, who covers health and the environment for ProPublica, was the lead reporter on their investigation. Sharon, we mentioned some of the places where it's found. How pervasive is formaldehyde in everyone's everyday life?
It's incredibly pervasive. Formaldehyde is essentially ubiquitous. So indoors, the concentration is particularly high because lots of products emit it, like furniture, flooring, sometimes even clothing. but it's also outdoors and pretty much everywhere outdoors.
And how much more dangerous is formaldehyde than other airborne pollutants?
Yeah, so the EPA analyzes toxic air pollutants and estimate the cancer risk for each one of them. Ideally, they're supposed to limit the exposure to these chemicals so that they cause no more than one case of cancer in every million people exposed over a lifetime. And for most of the dozens of toxic air pollutants they look at, that is the case. Formaldehyde causes more cancer than any of them by far. So according to the EPA's numbers, it's more than 20 cancers per million people. But what we found in our investigation and what the EPA acknowledged to us is that that number is an underestimate, and it's a vast one because the actual number using their best estimate is closer to 77 cases of cancer in every million people.
You say the EPA acknowledges they underestimate the danger. Are they doing enough to address the danger, even at the level they say it is? And what more can they do?
They could do more for sure. But what they decide in this report is really important to the limits they end up putting on the chemical. And so to enact limits, they need to find unreasonable risk. And despite all the formaldehyde in outdoor air that we were just talking about, they found no unreasonable risk. And there are a number of situations where they didn't find unreasonable risk, even though their numbers seem to point to unreasonable risk. So those are the concerns that we were pointing at. But we'll have to see what happens next now that they've issued this report.
You mentioned formaldehyde outdoors. The American Chemistry Council, the trade group, responded to your story by pointing out that it ignored the fact that formaldehyde dissipates quickly in sunlight, and EPA data fully acknowledges that nearly all formaldehyde in the outdoor air come from natural biogenic sources and fires, primarily wildfires. What do you say to that?
In terms of the sources of formaldehyde, there are biogenic sources, and we talk about that in the article. And that means sources that come from nature. Those sources are greatly amplified, we learned, by industrial pollution. And industrial pollution, pollution from manufacturing plants and all sorts of industry, from car exhaust, that is measured by the EPA. We're not making up the EPA's numbers. We just use the EPA data, which I don't think the ACC would say is incorrect. So our reporting is correct.
Is there any indication that the new Trump administration will approach regulation of formaldehyde any differently than it's being dealt with now?
Yeah, there is. I mean, we know from the first Trump administration, when they rolled back many, many environmental regulations and rules, that they tend to take a more industry, or they did last time, a more industry-friendly stance. And everything he said on the campaign trail makes us think that he'll continue to do this. Also, Pete Sessions in Congress, a staunch ally of Trump, recently wrote a letter to the EPA saying that he wants to focus on revisiting what the Biden administration did on formaldehyde as a top priority for 2025. So we know that in Trump's circle that people are already focused on how to undo this.
Now, I know you and your colleagues at ProPublica have also published stories about telling people how they can limit their exposure to formaldehyde. What are some of the suggestions or some of the things people can do?
Well, you want to look at the list of ingredients when there are some on your products. Also, sometimes products will have labels about whether they do or do not contain formaldehyde. But the best way when you get, for instance, new products like pieces of furniture, a lot of them emit lots of formaldehyde in the first days and weeks that you own them. So you might want to off-gas them if you have a garage, in a garage or outdoors. And the other thing is to actually keep your windows open when you can.
Sharon Lerner of ProPublica, thank you very much.
Thank you for having me. Really appreciate it.
These days, most of the video entertainment we watch isn't at the movies, on television, or even on a computer. It's on a smartphone. To cater to these changing habits, companies, many of them Chinese, are turning out bite-sized soap operas for phone viewing. Here again, Ali Rogan.
You may have seen the ads on TikTok or Facebook. The plots often involve billionaires, werewolves, or sordid affairs, and the dramas unfold in 1 to 2 minute increments, in the palm of your hand.
You're the jealous one, showing up everywhere I go, getting into business deals with me.
With one cliffhanger after another to entice viewers to continue.
If I didn't know any better, I'd say you're still in love with me.
And in the first quarter of 2024, apps like Real Short and DramaBox raked in $146 million in global revenue outside of China, an 8,000% increase over 2023. EJ Dixon is a senior writer at New York Magazine covering culture. EJ, thank you so much for joining us. Walk us through what these microdramas are and what is the appeal?
So they're called vertical shorts or vertical series, and they're essentially feature-length films that are broken down into minute-long chunks, like the size of your average TikTok video. And the idea is that the viewer will just scroll through them like they do with the TikTok feed and watch the whole thing in one sitting. They're not intended for consumption like on a laptop or on like a traditional big screen TV. It's almost exclusively for mobile consumption.
Tell us about how popular this is in China and outside of China. We know that in China it's a $4.4 billion industry, but how much has the industry grown since it took off there?
They're incredibly popular in China. They sort of took off around the pandemic, and the industry has grown exponentially since then. The biggest market is not in the United States. It's in countries where people are more likely to consume entertainment on their mobile phones, like India and the Philippines. They have big market share there. But they're also popular in the United States. I spoke to the CEO of one of these companies, Real Short, which is kind of like the leading app in this space. And they're based in Silicon Valley. And he said that they're pulling in about $10 million in revenue per month, which is pretty staggering.
I don't mean to overgeneralize here, but the content is not exactly, it doesn't feel Oscar worthy. Is that is that a trademark of this genre? And is that something that if it becomes more mainstream would have to change?
I would say not Oscar worthy is a good way of putting it. It's some of the most abysmal content I've ever seen in my life, to be perfectly frank. And when you talk to the actors and the producers and even like the CEO of Real Short about this, they see that as an asset. Like they don't see the low quality as being detrimental to the success of the platform because they don't see it as an art form, really. I mean, they see it as what it is, which is like algorithmically generated content that has mass cross-cultural appeal. The comparison that the Real Short CEO made to me when I spoke with him was that it's like reading USA Today instead of like the Wall Street Journal, which I think is a somewhat apt comparison. If you're looking for something artistic and well done, like you're not going to watch one of these series. If you're looking for something to distract you on your commute home, then these will be a good option.
What are the differences between other sorts of productions and these vertical shorts?
It's hard to answer that citing just one thing because the answer is pretty much everything is different than the traditional Hollywood production process. They're non-union. They also almost exclusively hire directors who are recent graduates of film schools in LA and who were born in China, so can speak, Mandarin, so they can communicate with the CEOs who are largely based in China. The scripts, I've gotten mixed answers about where the scripts come from, including like whether or not they're written by humans. It's very much lower budget, very rushed. The production process is totally different than it is in Hollywood, even though in some cases these shoots are happening like feet away, yards away from like a traditional Hollywood shoot.
What's the payment model? How do people pay to get this content?
Typically what happens is somebody will download the app, and they advertise heavily on TikTok and Instagram. And you'll swipe through about 15 minutes worth of content or 15 like 1-minute videos. And then they'll say, if you want 5 more chapters or if you want to watch 5 more minutes, you have to pay X amount of money, like $5. So in order to finish one of these series, the user typically has to pay between $25 to $40.
Do you anticipate that this is going to continue to grow? Is this what audiences are looking for these days?
It's a great question. I got a lot of mixed answers on that. There are people, even within the vertical shorts industry themselves, who think this is just a fad, this is a niche thing, this is never going to get traction in mainstream Hollywood. Mainstream Hollywood thinks of this as a joke. But I've also heard rumors that pretty big platforms are interested in getting into this genre. I think that what we've learned over the past 5 years with the streaming wars and with the strikes and all the obstacles that Hollywood has had to overcome is that Hollywood underestimates this type of digital content, this type of innovative digital content at its own peril.
EJ Dixon, covering culture for New York Magazine. Thank you so much for your insights.
Thanks so much for having me.
And that is PBS News Weekend for this Saturday. I'm John Yang. For all of my colleagues, thanks for joining us. See you tomorrow.
Major funding for PBS News Weekend has been provided by the ongoing support of these individuals and institutions. This program was made possible by the Corporation for Public Broadcasting and by contributions to your PBS station from viewers like you. Thank you.
You're watching PBS.